Okay, hello. Yeah, good morning, and thank you for the introduction. I would like to start with a brief introduction of my panelists here. So, first of all, on my left side, we have Professor Hackethal from Goethe University, and he's also heading the eFinance lab and Unibator Fintech. On my left side as well, I have Dr. Finz. He's the co-founder and co-CEO. Oh, okay, sorry. Here's Dr. Finz, yeah, co-founder and co-CEO of Vaamo Finanz AG. On my left side, sorry for that, I have Dr. Oster, co-founder and CEO of Clark Frankfurt Main. On my right-hand side, I continue with Mr. Hoppe. He's the CEO of the Main Incubator. And on the right, it's Mr. Lemmingson. He's the Director of International Business Communities Cluster from the Frankfurt Economic Development. So we have a panel here with research perspective, with economic development perspective, with actual fintech startups, and I like to jump in directly into the discussion with the panelists. And I also ask the audience if you have, regarding the topic we are discussing some questions, raise your hand, and I will try to sort of keep track and also involve questions from the audience into that. I would like to start with a question. This morning we discussed that Frankfurt and the Rhine-Main region wants to become a successful fintech cluster, and my question to the panelists would be, what activities are required for Frankfurt and the Rhine-Main region to become a successful fintech cluster? What are your views on that? Maybe I'd like to start with Professor Hackethal.
Sure. So what is needed? Let's start where we are, and then we might also discuss what the objective is, what the vision is. So where are we? I mean, it's undisputed that Frankfurt is a financial hub, probably the greatest, not by the size of the city, but in terms of volume, probably the most important in Germany. It has 2 central banks and so on. You know all this. Logistics are great. It's an international city. So, I mean, if you look at this from the outside, the question emerges, why isn't Frankfurt already #1 fintech city in Germany? And then you have these reasons, and I don't know whether they are so convincing. It's not so sexy like in Berlin. It's so expensive. Maybe it's too small. I'm not really convinced. So maybe this could be an idea also for you to find out why is it not yet there. So actually the picture, and you had a volcano, my picture, think about Frankfurt as a almost fintech hub is the picture that I'm also using in my research. It's the last mile issue. And the last mile issue says, or wants to evoke the thought that actually everything is here, that I've talked about: logistics, banks, supervisors, young people, talent, research, you name it. But still something seems to be missing. But it cannot be much. Yeah? We don't have to reinvent the wheel. So it's only little. But what is this little? So it makes sense to look at other cities that have built these hubs within a short period of time. Let's say Lisbon, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and so on. And what you see, and if you talk to these people, they always tell you it's community. Yeah? But it's one community, yeah? One central community. Sometimes they say you need this place where everybody meets, so the central location. And but I believe much more is this idea of community, and this is what I believe is still missing. We have a couple of small communities. Actually, you all know them, and there are a couple of events, monthly events. Yesterday there was Hackathon #5 in the city in this year. So there are many events, but they don't get this combined stimulus or push or thrust. But we might talk about this. So that's my initial statement. I don't think that's a lot that is missing. It's a community, and behind this community there's going to be 4 or 5 people that need to drive them full time. So I don't think it's a lot, but we need to get started, and in the very morning we heard that there is some start already. We got momentum, so let's keep the momentum.
Yeah, thank you for that statement. Maybe I'd like to move on. I mean, you moved just from Berlin to Frankfurt, and maybe you can give us some insight what your motivation was, or do you already see Frankfurt as an interesting or prospective fintech hub?
Yes, and in the end, the outcome of what I have to say goes in a very similar direction. Because, as you said, we've just made the move. We moved from Berlin to Frankfurt with a fintech startup. So exactly what we're looking for, basically. The move was not motivated by anything but personal reasons. So that was the very beginning. But we studied the city very closely and wanted to see, basically, is it a decision and is it possible to build a successful startup in Frankfurt? So before we made the move, we looked at the infrastructure, we looked at the talent. We actually went as far as we put advertisings in newspapers and looked for people that can start in our startup. And within 1 week, we have found 200 developer CVs of people that could start in our company. This is something you couldn't even do in Berlin. Yeah? There's much more war, actually, for that talent. So we've looked at many, many things, and in the end, although the decision was driven by personal reasons, we couldn't find a single reason not to go. And I think this goes very well with what you said, that many people are waiting for something, and we've came from the other perspective. We wanted to do something, and we came from Berlin. We said, okay, we want to do this, and we couldn't find a single reason to say, actually, no, why not Frankfurt? And that, in the end, made the decision very easy for us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, thank you for that initial statement. And maybe let's move on with someone else from the
Maybe
Fintech.
I continue, but my statement goes in a similar direction, because for us, I mean, we all came from Frankfurt, and for us, the question was sort of, can we stay here or should we go to Berlin? And we did very much the same, and realized that Frankfurt is a great place. And after, 2 years later, we still believe it's a great place. We have the right talent here and so on. And I think the last mile that's missing is that the world outside, so to speak, understands and that Frankfurt is a great place, because I really believe all the great talent we have here, all the great startups we have here, 90% of them have some kind of connection to Frankfurt or the Rhine-Main area. And if you ask somebody from the outside, a great web developer, a great online marketing guy who has no connection to Frankfurt, it still is very tough to convince these people to come here. And I don't know why that is, but it's still not out there, the word that Frankfurt is a great place to live and a great startup place. And for that, I think it needs the right ecosystem that sort of spreads the word then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Let's see what Mr. Hoppe has to say from the perspective of an incubator here in the area.
I mean, I absolutely agree, and what Mr. Hackethal says, it's communication, community, but also communication, as we hear in the morning. I would say we are not noisy enough. We have to talk about it, and we have to, if you look to, let's say, Berlin, how many marketing and advertising activities they use to bring Berlin to one of the top places for startups, and they are very successful, and we are just happy with having the potential in Frankfurt. Everybody's saying we have everything in place, and then we stop. And your question was, what do we need to be a fintech hub? We are not really a hub. For a hub, you need a specific place, a specific location, and a name you can let's say, which identifies the entire hub idea. Compared to London, it's level 39, and we don't have that. We even don't have that in Berlin, and there are a lot of panels in Berlin as well, saying that Berlin is becoming the big fintech hub of Germany. This is a nice idea. I would say this wouldn't work, because the entire knowledge and the really deep knowledge of banking, this is definitely in this region, and they are better in e-commerce, and they are really good techies, but the real needed fin knowledge, this is in Frankfurt, and we should use this. And later on I maybe can give some ideas what we thought about building such a hub, and then we can see what the audience will say, whether they would use it, or if this still is an idea to move to Frankfurt if you already have the relationship to Frankfurt.
Yeah, definitely an interesting point, seeing like what is really the hub. I mean, building a fintech hub or asking the guiding question, what are the critical success factors? That's definitely a thing we have to define somehow during the round. And yeah, I'm eager to see what Mr. Lemmingson has to say from the perspective of economic development here in the Frankfurt area. What are, from your view, the critical success factors?
From our point of view, the critical success factors have been already mentioned more or less. That means Frankfurt has a very strong base. Also, our minister mentioned it. You have this combination of a finance hub, and you have the combination of an IT hub, and this is quite good base. What we need is one thing, to assemble the forces here. We have also a very active fintech scene, which is still a little bit fragmented, and we have to unify this in a certain way. We have to be also, like Mr. Hoppe said, being more proud of the achievements Frankfurt made. Just to mention a few, like the takeover of 360T by Deutsche Börse, Clark moved to Frankfurt, and we have also established quite good formats of fintech networks and conferences. So I would say actually they are running 5 regularly, and we have a lot of always new emerging formats which are quite interesting. So it's just the last mile, and the last mile is we have to create a platform, a dynamic platform in this way, and then to fix the points to move forward. And one of the very important points is also the FinTech Center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, are there comments, remarks from the audience regarding that topic? What are, from the audience point of view, things you'd like to add, you'd like to ask? There's a question in the back. Yeah, yeah, maybe we can hand a microphone to the person in the back, please. Okay, microphone is coming. Just a second.
Yeah, my question is in regards to creating visibility for Frankfurt as a hub. Don't you think there is not much activity involved here in terms of marketing the city? Because if we compare Frankfurt with one of the cities in the US, let's say San Francisco, they're about to launch an online platform which will basically bring together all the stakeholders in one place, just like a Facebook for fintech. So at this point of time, don't you think there is not much activity going on in this regards to create the visibility?
Okay, so the question is regarding a platform. So do we need a platform, something like Facebook for fintechs? And I see Mr. Hoppe wants to comment on that, please.
As always, there is not enough done yet. The big question is, do we need a virtual platform, or should we maybe better start with a real platform, like a hub, a house, or better for Frankfurt, because it's the, it stands for Frankfurt, a skyscraper, so in a different format than Berlin. I would say we have to do both in parallel, and we have to do it very fast, and the biggest success factor is definitely the execution, and we have to start. And what we see in Frankfurt is that we discuss for too long, even knowing what to do. And then we still say, yeah, but the difference is not big enough, and we still have the potential, and we can still manage to stay close to the developments of other countries. Okay. But for example, we had in Singapore, there was a conference 1-2 months ago, and there were 7 fintech hubs pitching for their fintech hubs. Mm-hmm. If you ask me, who should we send there? A Berlin guy, a Frankfurt guy? I don't know, because we don't have that.
Okay, so is this not so good activity because fintech is not really in priority, or we realized a bit late that fintech should be made a priority for Frankfurt?
I mean, it's a mixture. We are definitely maybe 2 years behind UK, so London, definitely. But this doesn't mean that we are not aware of what's out there. If you look or see, 12 months ago, we had around 100, 120 fintechs in the DACH region, and now we are close to, I would say, 400, maybe 450. So it's increasing quite rapidly or quite fast. So we know all of that, and we know what to do, but we're not doing it. Mm-hmm. unfortunately, or we not doing it really in size big enough. Yeah, everybody's now thinking about little centers in Frankfurt. I think this is not the right answer. We have to have one big center and not 20 small centers.
Thank you.
Okay, I think with Dr. Oster wanted to comment next.
Actually, I think there are many things, and I like that we call it a cluster, actually, because a cluster means that there are many, many different parties participating, and many different parties have to do their share to make it work, basically. There is the universities, there's the cities, there's the startups already there, there is banks, there is incubators, and everyone can basically take a share and make it happen. And what I sometimes see in Frankfurt is that there's too many spectators of fintech and too little doers of fintech, basically. It's always the same people that do something, and this is a little bit of a problem, basically. And everyone can do something, like take universities, for example. So obviously you're engaged, and the Frankfurt School is doing something, but this is where it starts. Yeah? This is where people make a career decision. And if in the last year of their education, basically, people don't have startup as a good career opportunity in mind, they don't do it. Yeah? And even the people that basically want to stay in Frankfurt don't consider startup as an option. Then there's, of course, the location. So we need to have, to make that community going, if you have only a small number of startups and they are distributed through the city, basically, no community can be established. So you must put them all in one location so that there is a 1 + 1 is 3 effect, and you have positive network effects, basically. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing. Plus, sorry, just one more thing. And the startups also need to do something. So there are many startup events, but it's always the same people organizing and doing something. So this can be small stuff, just bringing everyone together, talking about a specific topic, doing sports activities, whatever, basically. But everyone can take a little share. And what I always see is that too little people basically do this.
Okay, so we had 2 statements already in the direction. We think too much, we have to do more, we have to become more active. So I'd like to see what you think about that.
I just want to add that I think it's very important to ask the question, what can we actually, or what kind of support can come from the city, for example? Because I think really it's important that the main activity is driven by the community itself. A little bit what you said. I think it needs to come from the startup, it needs to come from the university, from the banks on the scene. I think that's really what creates a successful scene. And I think the city can only do something, provide the infrastructure, make sure that, or help to remove roadblocks and all this kind of stuff. But I think and that goes also to the question with the platform. I think the platform is already something where I think that needs to come from the ecosystem itself. And it's not helpful if the city all of a sudden provides everything like here's this and the platform, and now please we are the Fintech Hub. I think that won't work. So that's something that needs to also come from within the scene, and I think that's very, very important.
Okay, let's see what Professor Hackethal has to comment on that topic.
We talk about we. Who's we? Is this Frankfurt? Is this Rhine-Main? Is this us? Is this you? So who's we? And I believe this is an issue, namely that we are talking about an ecosystem, a community, and we have this goal, but who is we, or who is the person, who is the group, who is driving this? And this is an issue of leadership. Yeah? So who is the natural leader? So we have all these groups and they don't share in detail the same interest. I mean, we talked about banks or old economy, new economy. That's not always in line with each other. So if you have this community, the stakeholders in one place, they don't have the same opinion. So who is the leader? I mean, this is a key question, right? And if you have this issue of a coordination problem, a challenge, then you can do essentially 2 things. Name one leader and say, this is you, you have the mandate. That's going to be difficult. Who is this? It needs to be independent, experienced, and so on. But still, I believe it could be a group of leaders. Actually, that's my favorite model, to think about a group of leaders that drive this forward, and we have seen this in other cities that do that full-time and so on. So this is the question, who could that be? Who deserves also, or who has the credibility and so on. The other one would be a coordination model. So you have a moderator and you meet in working groups months and months again, and believe this is the situation in which we are now. This is why it takes so long time. Sometimes it's a good model, but I believe for this issue that we're facing right now, it's not a good model. So also the question goes to you, who would you trust? I mean, talk about money, let's put a price tag of 25 million over the next 5 years. That would do it, I say. Yeah, rent, marketing, and so on, 25 million. That should be worth it, I believe, right? So that's probably not so much the issue. it's the who does it, and we all share in this insight, I believe. So I try to simplify a bit, and be provocative. So maybe you have different views. Christian, you share this view or not?
I totally agree that 25 million shouldn't be the issue. But if you have exactly these discussions with potential sponsors, and all the sponsors they agreeing on, yes, we need such a hub or a marketing idea or an agency with responsible people working full-time on the idea, etc. They agree on that one, but when it comes to money, then 25 million is more than the 2 billion other cities spending on the same topic. So I would say 25 million is nothing, but it's hard to get the 25 million in 5 years, even if this is totally enough, and with new tax income, it might be refinanced, but it's very tough to get this cash.
Yeah, maybe let's see, Mr. Lemmingson, maybe you have 25 million in your pocket and a few people to start that. What's your view?
Sorry, I don't have the 25 million with me, and in this way I would refer to our city treasurer, Mr. Becker. But it is true, there has to be some investment by the city of Frankfurt and also by the state of Hesse. But about the amount, okay, it's also depending what size of the project it would be. We have 2 or 3 different initiatives who are different in scale, and our task is to evaluate it a little bit and also to address then the numbers to our city government and also to the state of Hesse. And I would agree with Mr. Hackethal that there can't be only one person running it. There should be a core group, and it should be mixed by, I would say, some public and neutral sector like us or the state of Hessen, from the fintech side, but also from university and the established banking sector who is interested in. And that would work, and it should have also this dynamic and not being too much fixed to some kind of structure where you need a lot of coordination, discussions and formal agreements.
Okay, so yeah, if I may summarize that in between, we sort of may need some people, we need leadership, we need people who actually do and not do so much of a thinking. Let's look a bit more on the strengths, let's say. I mean, definitely we have here in the region strong banking, a lot of banks. But we also, for fintech, we need the technology. So yeah, let's have a look on what do we have here in Frankfurt and the Rhine-Main region on the technology side. I mean, we have seen some points regarding resources, talents, and so on and so forth. But yeah, what other strengths do we have here, and what other strengths do we need or things do we need here? What's the view in the panel? No.
Maybe just a very short note on what we have here, and I think that's very obvious that we have the banking know-how and that we have the people that have the ability to do things. And actually, if you put it the other way around, Berlin is desperately trying to get Frankfurt banking know-how in the city. Yeah? And we basically let it happen. Yeah? And we let good people move to Berlin and do the startups there. Yeah? So this is a problem. This is like excellent German researchers leaving the country and building stuff in the United States because they find maybe better conditions or something like this. So we have the banking know-how here and we need to leverage it, just as a first point.
Okay, so we have the banking knowledge here. Yeah, Professor Hackethal.
Regulation is a big topic. We had this also, of course, in the last panel. I believe the regulator has an important role to play, of course, in setting the rules, but also in understanding what's going on. And BaFin and the Finance Ministry, the Finance Ministry just commissioned a study on the German fintech market. BaFin is also seeking the dialogue, but of course there's much more to go. I'd argue there's no last mile. There are a couple of miles to go. But of course we can have a look also at other countries and how or what part the regulator or the supervisory agency plays in an ecosystem, in a hub. And there are different models, but it's always a model of dialogue. They can send their people for work shadowing at Clark to see what's going on. They can, of course, give guidance in what's possible, what not. and so on. We haven't seen too much of this yet, but it's important because we have this discussion on and on. Is this now in or without or outside, and so on. I mean, of course, the comparison is problematic. But if you look at FCA in the UK, and I'm sure you all have seen what they're doing lately. I mean, they're pushing fintech ahead. They're pushing London ahead. Yeah, so it's not being passive and making sure that there are guidelines they push. As I learned yesterday, they even have a metric, the number of fintechs that the FCA guides into the market. So they are not paid, but they are assessed regarding how much fintechs there are. Yeah. So this is one, and what FCA also does, they do experiments with fintechs, but also with established companies to learn about how clients behave, how clients react to fintechs, but also to digitalized offerings of established banks in order to understand how they can foster competition. Our regulator doesn't have this mandate by law, so it's not possible that they can do it. Yeah? But still, there are two extremes, and I believe BaFin has to move a bit, and they do. So I believe this is important, and this hub in Frankfurt, and again, this is a big advantage of Frankfurt, because you have the infrastructure, you have the network already, could be the hub where this dialogue is organized, and this is of utmost importance.
So organizing the dialogue, let's maybe see from another fintech company, what would you say regarding technology, resources, how good is the situation for you?
I think that we also have in the whole region quite a big pool of talented technology people. So, and going a little bit deeper, I think where we lack, I think what we definitely have is the whole back-end people. I mean, the real, I don't know, say traditional programmers. I don't know, and I think there we have a lot of knowledge how to build secure backends that fulfill all the data security stuff that we need in the finance industry, interfaces and so on. And I think we have an increasing scene with front-end developers, but I think that's maybe something where we are lacking a little bit, because that's not the classical know-how we have here. This kind of people that are somewhere in between programming and design and user interfaces, because that's more, yeah, that is not, obviously not was never really the priority of classic banks and the know-how here. But I think, I mean, if I look at Vaamo, we have 8 developers, and from these 8 developers, roughly 6 are backend developers. So what I want to say is, and I think that's probably true for a lot of fintech. So again, here we have a big pool of very talented people.
Okay, but yeah, that was a very specific requirement, having people sort of between, not just purely programming Java or other programming languages and not being the pure designer, but sort of being in between and helping you develop solutions like you do. Yeah.
I could also add, like, going from the technology side a little bit away, I could also add online marketing, performance marketing, all this kind of a little bit more really online and internet specific things. I think that's something where we lag a little bit behind.
Okay. Yeah, maybe if we have that point that we need to do more on resources, maybe we can see what can incubators, economic development do to help get these resources here and attract them to come to Frankfurt and the Rhine-Main region.
Maybe to add what's lagging, because we're still talking about the potential, and then we also have to talk about what's lagging. I would say, and it sounds a bit strange for Frankfurt, money is lagging. We have a lot of cash sitting here, but not everybody is investing in startups or in new ideas. So if you look to Frankfurt, we have 2 incubators here, Fintech Group and us, and we have more than just 2 banks. So where are the other banks? They have their innovation labs and so on, and it's getting more and more. But if you aggregate all the amounts allocated or potentially allocated to startup investments, it's not so much, and this is definitely lagging. To your question, what we are doing, we provide not just the little cash we have, but also the banking knowledge, definitely, and we open up the access to our clients. which is, I think, the most leverage and the most strategic value for startups to work with us.
Okay, thank you. And from the perspective of economic development, Mr. Lemmingson?
Well, one very important point is also from the infrastructure side. Just to mention that, for instance, for all these technical demands, we have actually about 40,000 square meter rented just for data centers in Frankfurt. There is still a higher demand, and we have also with the D6 perfect intersection. So from the technical infrastructure, also as forever, it's always the airport and our traffic junction connections. So these are also quite good advantages. For investors, this is, I think, a common point where we say it should be more attractiveness for investors. And maybe this can come when we unify a little bit our activities, if we provide a better marketing, and that we are also more conscious of our offers, which Frankfurt and the Rhine region have. And maybe also include maybe the Technical University of Darmstadt, which would fit perfectly to Goethe University and Frankfurt School.
So basically, yeah, we need to bring people closer together, investors, incubators, but also universities, practitioners, developers, and so on and so forth. And yeah, I'd like to ask the next question, how can we do that? I mean, how can we bring these organizations closer together? I mean, typically every organization has the own interests or is acting on behalf of his or her own interests, but what can we do to facilitate that? Because we have representatives from most areas here in the panel. What would you say? What's your view?
Well, in a sense, it's reiterating what we talked about all the time. So what do we have to do what do we have to have at one place that some stakeholders are willing to invest monies, others to come to the city, and so on. So what could we add maybe to what we said already, infrastructure, technology, and so regulation? Maybe what we need is a great story, a role model. So you're referring to 360T, yeah, a lot of money. Fintech, well, how long does this company exist already? 10 years. So I wouldn't consider this really as a startup. I mean, it's a great story, and we should, of course, be happy for every such story. But ideally, we have a narrative for Frankfurt. I mean, not talk about the slogan, Frankfurt, a place for fintech or something like that, but something that we can share and talk about. And part of this is people that are successful faces also. So it's also in between the lines. Let me also add what I find could be or is more important that many people believe. One is talent. So as Goethe University, for example, we are also trying to put startups, fintech, entrepreneurship on the radar of students. We have some initiatives like Students Meet Startups, so that there is a job market. We have this Unibator. Plus, what we think about actually jointly with some other schools is a master for digital transformation. I don't know whether this is the real thing for people think about startup. Now I go to school for 2 years and then I start my startup. But it's of course a place also for exchanging ideas. So this is what a university can also do. But let me add this last point. Research is important. It's experimental research, empirical research. And we are at Goethe University, I believe, are particularly strong in doing this, namely in finding out causalities. And why do we need causalities? Because in many cases in fintechs, it's about client behavior, understanding client behavior. I said that before, talk about the regulator. So fintechs, but also established banks need to understand why their clients react in one way or another, what works and what not. Yeah? And given that we have more and more data, that we have the technology, we can actually test it. And at the university, this is what you should believe, and rightly so. We have the capacities to do this. So as a little marketing block, what we are doing already and have been doing, but more so, is working together with established players, but also new players in establishing behavioral finance labs also within the companies to learn together. Yeah? And of course, ideally, if we have this hub, we can exchange ideas much more. Yeah? So there are pieces, once again, many pieces. Some of them you don't know, but they are here. So the real challenge is putting these pieces together into one nice picture. And again, I keep on saying this, we need 5 people who do this full time. I'm not talking about people like us who do it after 5 o'clock in the evening and start to think about fintech, but we do need people who do it full time. And then I want to make you think about who it is going to be. Yeah? Because it cannot be a fintech person necessarily, it has other things to do. I don't know whether it can be a banker, who is a banker in this sense, yeah? So this is a crucial question, but I feel for me it's the most critical question.
So we get a bit more, let's say, meat to the bone. So what we ask at the beginning, what is really the hub? So yeah, maybe we need to just find a place to meet, to see each other, to bring people together, not just here at a forum, at a conference, but also to have that on a regular basis. And yeah, there are many ideas in the round, and so maybe yeah, it's worth thinking that through. But you also want to add to comment on that.
You need to have a look how it happened in Berlin with e-commerce at the time, right? And there was one big building in a backyard where a large incubator was sitting, and they had 6 stories or 7 stories, and in each story there was a startup. And people moved from one basically story to another very quick. Yeah? One startup was growing, so everyone moved from one floor to another. The other one was declining, so people were put somewhere else basically. And this made it extremely flexible and made it possible to put lots of resources on hot topics very quick. And somehow this is needed because here the talent is spread throughout the city, as I said before already. And you have the big city map of Frankfurt, and one startup is here in the north, one is in the south, one is there. There is absolutely no flexibility between the companies. Of course, we sometimes come together and meet, and then everyone is in one place, but this daily exchange doesn't happen. Yeah? And I guess we have probably sometimes the same problems in online marketing, in UX design, or whatever, basically. But it's not that easy to have a platform to exchange, basically. And this happened in Berlin from the very beginning, very good, with this one big house, basically. And from then on, much more things were built around, basically. And this is how it started there. So that could be a role model for us as well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely good point. So again, a building, bringing people together, and I can confirm that I'm currently doing with a group of students at Frankfurt School a survey looking where the fintechs are located. And yeah, one result is definitely that they are not close together. And so the idea of building a hub may make sense. Someone wanted to comment from...
I just want to quickly add, I think even in Frankfurt we have good examples, right? I mean, the House of Finance, for example, on the Frankfurt campus, I mean, I think it's just a house, but I think over the last couple of years it was very successful in being one place for a lot of finance research and stuff like this. There's a House of Logistics. I mean, I think we have these examples where actually a place, a center helped to bring knowledge and people together and also represent something to the outside. And I think something very similar can be created also for fintechs.
Yeah. Mr. Hoppe?
I mean, it all comes back to two big questions. Who's doing it and who's sponsoring or financing it? And we discussed a lot which could be the right building. And there are currently some nice buildings already entire empty and new buildings, and we can start there tomorrow. But big question is, who's doing the marketing for that? Who are the 5 guys? And who's paying for that? Yeah. And then we always come back, who's sponsoring the 25 million? We know everything about who's doing the canteen, so it's definitely not Eurest. It can be, I think we have one sponsor here, Gründerküche or something like that. They can do it. There are so many startups in the food area as well, and we have nice ideas how it should look like and what to do. But 25 million. Yeah. That's a big question. If we have this money, we can be of interest for the 5 people doing this job, because it's a very visible and very important job. 25 million. Yeah, that's it.
Again, yeah. So we are time-wise close to the end. So at the beginning, we asked the question, what are really the critical success factors? And if I sum up a bit of what we discussed here, we've learned that we need people with hats on, we need people who do stuff, And yeah, instead of just having facilitators and people just discussing, yeah, we need to sort of actively doing more hands-on stuff. And I think definitely we need people who have the time. So that couldn't be a job which can be done like in 10, 20% of your time. So we need to concentrate, focus more activities here in the area. But I see Professor Hackethal also wants to give a final concluding remark.
No final. But
no
given
final?
that we have so many people in the room and we talk for 45 minutes, so the question to you, I mean, it's your job, but I just want to use the time. So who believes that in 5 years down the time, given what we discussed, Frankfurt is going to be the major Fintech hub in Germany? And it is already. Okay, that's debatable. Then the major. No, I mean, if you believe, then if it is still the major hub, yeah. But phrase it as you wish. In 5 years down the road, the apparent or the undisputed Fintech hub in Germany. Who believes this is the case? Okay, you do. Okay, so who is not and who is not listening is the third question. Who doesn't believe this to be the case? Okay, so I don't know. What is it?
And then you can ask
70,
the question
30?
of continental Europe. I mean, currently we are beside London. We are the most important town in finance, in the established finance. And the big question is how this will be in 5 years.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, so we are out of time. So, and I like to thank my panelists for the active discussion. And so, a round of applause for my panelists. And thank you, everyone, for listening today.